were being abandoned by the company and saying that was a breach of the exclusive license of the JUTC. Mr. Phillips, the opposition spokesperson on transport, had said the 23 routes accounted for more than 25% of those in the Kingston Metropolitan Transport Region, and that removing the buses from those routes, he said, amounts to an abdication of the company's responsibility to provide service. And let me come back to you, Mr. Smith, because I understand the explanation you are giving in relation to the overcharging issue, which people have been talking to us about. But in relation to these 23 routes, is it that the buses, are JUTC buses, will be running on them, will not be running on them? What's the situation?
Yes, the argument that JUTC will abandon these 23 routes is not true.
I'm so sorry. Talk into the phone a little bit more if you could. You sound a little muffled.
The argument that JUTC will abandon these 23 routes is not true. The JUTC will continue to operate alongside these route taxi operators because, as you have just said a while ago, these hackney carriage operators have been operating there already. So remember now that JUTC operates on a schedule. So especially during the off-schedule arrangement, the route taxi operators come in handy in terms of convenience and service to the commuting public. So as far as I know, I don't know, speak for the JUTC, but as far as I know, there's no intention by the JUTC at this time to abandon those routes.
How does this affect the revenue and the profitability of the routes? What's the projection?
Well, in terms of revenue and profitability, that's something that JUTC will have to speak to. But as a regulator, the Transport Authority is more concerned about the order of the public passenger vehicle operation insofar as they should be compliant with the statute that are laid down. The hackney carriage operators, as they are now operating, majority of them are operating contrary to the terms and conditions of the license, and the law prescribes seizure as a remedy for this particular activity. Now, if you go out there and seize these vehicles, you are displacing them, and a lot of the commuters would be left stranded. So an opportunity now is being worked out where they can regularize themselves in terms of obtaining the appropriate license, having a proper fare structure attached to each route, and can provide the right service at the right price to the commuting public.
So why is that the better alternative in your view, other than ensuring that they're not running on routes they're not supposed to be running on?
Yes, it's a better alternative at this point in time because you displace a lot of the operators. And recall now that we're coming from an era JTC was unable to satisfy the needs. They didn't have the seats, they didn't have the buses. And these hackney carriage operators, for those number of years, were providing the services along the route, satisfying the demand of the customers. And it would be difficult, if not dishonest, just to displace them.
You spoke about order, though. Aren't the taxes one of the biggest sources of disorder in the city?
Well, I have known discomfort in terms of how you characterize your operation. In fact, the Transport Authority...
I'm so sorry, I missed that. I didn't hear that. You have what?
We have no disagreement in terms of how you characterize your operation.
Okay.
In fact, the Transport Authority is concerned about the operation of the taxi operators in the city and elsewhere. And so one of the things that the Transport Authority is working on in concert with other state agencies to include the KCMC, National Works Agency, is to find appropriate parking spaces for these taxi operators. We're looking at an area in Papine, we're looking at South Prairie, downtown Kingston, looking at another property that is owned by Jamaica Agricultural Society, and we have expanded our wings all the way into Discovery Bay, looking at property out there to create taxi car park for the taxi operators. So yes, we are concerned about their overall operation, and one of the things you want to do with this conversion process is to bring some semblance of order to your operations, because the hackney carriage by their very nature now are not confined to a particular parking space, and that is why you find them littering the spaces all over the Kintia.
It's not just about the parking, I understand, because we've spoken to them about difficulties letting off people, no designated parking spaces and so on. But again, I'm trying to understand, how is this not just regularizing and institutionalizing disorder? I mean, hasn't it been, haven't we lived the experience that the more and more and more individual taxis we have on the road, the bigger the problem of disorder becomes? Shouldn't we move, in other words, shouldn't the move be towards more and more mass transit and less of these individualized cars, which seem absolutely incapable of operating with any kind of regard to road users and the road code?
And again, we have no disagreement to that. Mass transit has to be the way to go. But we call now that these hackney carriage operators, they're already out there. What we're seeking to do is to transition their license type to give them a license more befitting of the service that they're providing, so that the regulator can bring some semblance of order in terms of the manner in which they operate, their pricing mechanism, and that kind of thing.
You're saying the minister says this is not a new arrangement. Tell me what that means.
I'm not speaking for the ministry, I'm speaking for the transport authority.
I understand, but what they're saying is that JUTC has, I'm reading from the statement, based on recommendations from the transport authority, issued no objection confirmations permitting a limited number of route taxis to operate along these corridors. It said, and they said this arrangement is not new and does not represent a breach of the exclusive license. So I'm asking you, in terms of from the transport authority perspective, is it, when they said this arrangement in terms of route taxes,
it's not new. You have the massive taxi operating within the KMTR from as far back as 2002. I think Jonestown, somewhere in the region of 2007. So it's not new for route taxi to operate alongside the JTC.
Okay, but we're moving towards more and more and more of that rather than less.
I understand the concern, but the point we're making is that this is an arrangement that will allow the regulator to regularize their operation, keep them on specific route, destination marking, that kind of thing, and attach an appropriate fare structure in keeping with the service they're providing now to the customers, because in fact they're out there already providing the service. So it's not that we're throwing new operators to the mix.
And I think
change in the license type.
Yeah, and I think that's precisely the concern when you said they're out there already providing the service, and it doesn't seem as if the transport authority has any power to keep them in check. I mean, they just drive anyhow they want drive, them but drive you, them then do anything they want to do, and they all seem to be a law unto themselves. So when people hear about regularizing more and more, as a driver, you must get concerned.
I understand. Part of that now they are not to be taken care of in terms of training and public education of our drivers. And it's something that the authority is working towards.
Well, if I were to say that now isn't new, because from before Whoopi killed Philip, Mr. Smith, we're talking about training drivers and training conductors, and I know training programs have taken place. So is it that they're not consistent or what?
Yes, but you're speaking to a particular behavioral problem, and you and I know that behavior change comes about as a result of training.
True.
So if we are able, through training, to convert some of these operators and have them set good examples for their peers to follow, I think we would be on our way to effecting some kind of change. It didn't happen just yesterday, and it will take some time to correct the behavioral issues that are out there.
In your expert opinion, training and working with the transport operators have led to any change in behavior? Because as a road user, I don't feel like it.
It might not be on the level that one would appreciate, but we can attest to the fact that training does, in fact, improve the behavior of the drivers.
So is there going to be any additional attention to these routes now with this arrangement, or is it that seeing that it's just seen as the drivers moving from one category to another, nothing really changes?
When you say additional attention, what do you mean?
I mean regulation.
Certainly, and that is what this arrangement will allow for the application of the legislative arrangement to support and manage the operations of road taxi.
Nearly out of time, but just one or two questions, if I could, from my listeners. A listener is asking, are road licenses of repeat offenders suspended or revoked?
Our road license of repeat offenders suspended or revoked?
Yeah. Meaning drivers, transport operators.
Are they asking if the Transport Authority has ever suspended any road license for repeat offense? Is that the question?
That sounds like the question, yes.
Well, what I can speak to, I don't have the numbers now to give you, but I know that there's a suspension revocation policy in the treating with conduct and behavior of drivers and conductors. I will have to refresh myself with that is concerned and update you.
Okay. Another listener is asking, how come the public hasn't been educated in terms of the distinction you are making between hackney taxes, hackney drivers and their fees, as opposed to route taxes, so that they understand the difference?
Well, when the fee was increased in 2023, the authority did put out several publications in terms of its fare structure. I accept and we take this as an opportunity now to refresh and remind the commenting public of what those fare structures are.
Is it that the Transport Authority believes the complaints are coming from commuters who don't understand the difference? It sounds as if you're not accepting people saying route taxes are overcharging them.
No, we have accepted that. In fact, we have commissioned our operation team to go into the field and to do the appropriate work. One, in terms of public education, disseminating of the right information, and two, prosecuting, bringing to book the operators who found to transgress in this regard.
All right, have to leave it there, out of time. Appreciate your time as always, Mr. Smith. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jim.
Rawson Smith is Managing Director at the Transport Authority. Remember our WhatsApp line, 876-254-0693. Give us your first name and your general location. I'm Dion Jackson Miller. So I had said to my listeners, I'd said to you guys, we're going to try to get the chair of the Electoral Commission to come and talk to us on this whole issue of the political ombudsman and what their mechanism is. We did make the request. We're told they're not ready to talk about that yet. They'll send out a statement when they are. I mean, I would say, first of all, Mr. Jarrett, when you're ready, your chair is here. I would say, second of all, with absolute respect, I don't understand how we're being told that at this stage, a few months before the general election, when this was put in place from before the local government election, which was last year, February. I can't understand how the Electoral Commission would not have, as a matter of fact, before the local government election, worked out a mechanism and let the public know, because we certainly haven't heard anything. So let's hope they do that post-haste. We'll keep on top of it and keep making the requests, maybe one a week. Maybe one a week, because that's supposed to be top of your agenda right now, don't? I mean, clearly we're well and truly into the campaign season. Well, probably been in it from last year, getting more and more intense, and we need to know what is the situation. Okay, so speaking of the Electoral Commission, they appeared today before Parliament's Constituency Boundaries Commission. This, of course, over the controversial Portmore 15th Parish issue, and the committee had written to the Electoral Commission, giving them until May 31 to review and provide recommendations on the boundaries. And Director of Elections, Glass Paul Brown, told the Parliamentary Committee today the process that's going to be used and what are the possible implications.
Our work is guided by what is required of us in Section 67 of the Constitution. The Commission, that the Electoral Commission of Jamaica, requires us to establish an interface between the Commission and the Standing Committee of Boundary. That has been done because we have received the instruction from the committee. And we, in the interim though, we have written to the Ministry of Local Government to so get the new boundary for the redefined St. Catherine. Because as you would appreciate, that Portmore was a part of the whole St. Catherine. So therefore there's a new boundary, the description for the new St. Catherine. And that would have to be gazetted, as is per the norm with the other parishes. So we await that aspect of it. We have started the work in terms of the preparation as was instructed. To apply what is known as the GIS technology and field work. We are about to embark on the field work for the new boundary and generate the relevant maps. The ECJ guideline, as was agreed by the Commission, that it should be for boundary alignment, will guide the way we proceed going forward. Members, a key step involved the establishment of a formal procedure for reaching and recording agreements along with the establishment of what is known as the Parish Boundary Forum, or known as the PBF, which will be chaired by a senior returning officer from the parish. That person will be appointed by me, the Director of Election. The PBF will be, as according to the guidelines, will be supported by a Parish Boundary Advisory Committee, the PBAC, which also will be chaired by a senior returning officer from the parish, appointed by me, the Director of Election. The ECJ will provide the necessary guidance and GIS technology support and electronic and paper mapping throughout the project to assist all stakeholders throughout the project. An initial meeting of the Parish Boundary Forum will be convened shortly based on the agreed structure. There's an agreed structure in the guideline in terms of the makeup of that PBF, and the Parish Boundary Advisory Committee will also be tasked to begin to conduct fieldwork, realigning the constituency boundaries, reconfiguring the electoral division, and also writing the constituency and polling division descriptions. That's a part of the fieldwork that needs to be done. So members, the fieldwork involves two primary objectives. First, we must investigate in the field the new St. Catherine and Portmore parish boundary. To achieve this accurately, our team will be physically walking the boundaries, accompanied by guides and key stakeholders. And secondly, it is critical that when we do that work, we capture the GPS coordinates for the new polling division boundaries within the parishes of St. Catherine and Portmore. To establish these new boundaries, it necessitates a number of changes, and these changes encompass splits and mergers for existing polling division. It also will require the renumbering and potential renaming of St. Catherine constituencies affected by the alignment. It also will require the renumbering of associated St. Catherine electoral division, followed by the renumbering of polling divisions within those affected constituencies. And it has to be agreed upon the official naming and numbering of the three designated Portmore constituencies. That will be critical in terms of naming those new three the constituencies that should remain in Portmore and the new Portmore parish. And finally, it will require the writing of the polling division's description for all impacted PDs to reflect the changes agreed upon. These steps, the Commission believes will ensure the new electoral map is accurately defined and implemented both geographically and administratively. A part of the process, Chair and members, is that both political parties will be required, both major political parties will be required to submit written proposal. Hopefully, an agreement can be reached by all members of the Parish Boundary Advisory Committee. In a case, though, where no agreement by the Parish Boundary Advisory Committee, an established procedure for accepting agreement be with a consultation between the nominated commissioners and the Director of Election, followed after that consultation, that is assuming that no agreement is arrived at the PBAC. Following that, the preparation of final draft of realignment for submission to the PBF for signing. MPs and constituency caretakers, ROs, need to sign off on the new constituency boundaries realignment and the electoral divisions, and also the PD numbering. And this agreement, based on the guideline that we have in place and as agreed by the Commission, that both general secretaries of both parties, both major political parties, will have to sign too. These agreement or disagreement would then be submitted to the ECJ, and if accepted without any change by the Commission, then we'll move forward in preparing a report that will then be submitted back to you, Chair. as the chairman of to the Boundaries Committee of Parliament. An approval of this committee, the next step will be then lead to the gazetting of the new electoral boundaries, be the electoral division, the PDs, and the constituency boundaries. Once this part is agreed to, then the acceptance of the Parliament would then be sought through this committee. And then we'll proceed based on that communication that will come back from the Parliament. Then the ECJ will then proceed afterwards in terms of doing the final step of the arrangement, and that is to communicate. It is our responsibility to communicate the effective date of the realignment, after which the voters list data set will be updated to reflect the new information, the new constituencies, the new electoral division and polling division. So that it is at that stage, then we will begin to print the list. And finally, that list will be published to all the constituencies in the parishes of St. Catherine, and by extension that of the Portmore parish. And then Portmore will be officially, based on the electoral aspect of it, then be established, guided by the electoral process.
All right, Director of Elections, Glassfall Brown. And I understand that or follow that, because I think I got lost somewhere in the agreements around it. The agreements or the lack of agreements and what is going to happen when there is agreement or no agreement. Anyway, saying all of that to say that I'd like to speak to the Director of Elections so that we can break down the process for you and get because what I'm hearing is an idealized account of what it would happen if everybody agrees. But we already know that everybody doesn't agree. We already know that one half of the equation, which is the PNP, is saying them in this, they not support this, and if they get into power, they're going to scrap this. So what does that mean for all these various steps that seem to rely on agreement? And I did hear the director speak to an established procedure involving the nominated members and the Director of Elections, but I have no idea what that means. So let's see if we can get the Director of Elections to come and talk to us about process. You know, I keep saying process is important, all right? So Mr. Brown was speaking at the Constituency Boundaries Committee of Parliament today about Portmore and the process to move it to Jamaica's 15th parish. Let's take the break. When we come back, we'll have our international news, also concerns about mistreatment of dogs in Jamaica, yes, and